6 bese kuthi ngale kwa 7:30 njengoba kungilesine utakhumula ukuthi sihlale siba nayo inkampani eMantini Boreholes sidabe sikhulumisana na sales and marketing manager ayanda Ndlangamandla namhla ke sidabe sikhuluma kabanti ngeground water sibuka nje ama advantages kanye nama disadvantages awo sidabe sicocisana naye lemsaseni nga 7:30 asibahlothe make sesithabene edinzaba.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3# and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Asipenze sinimukele sivusele nawo losanza kusivulela sidabuka tinzaba. Losabambe kuba ngundvunankulu Pholile Shakhantu uthi bantu besifazane kumele banikedwe emathuba ekusebenzisa i-internet netebuchwephesha njengoba lokho kutawabasita ukuthi baqale emabhizinisi batithuthukise. Shakhantu bakhuluma ehotela lase Happy Valley nakugujwa lusuku labomake International Women's Day.
Siqubulo salonyaka selusuku labomake International Women's Day sikhulumisa kusebenzisa tebuchwephesha kulingana kutebulili lesingathi i-innovation and technology for gender equality. Lihhovisi leliphinda ndvunankulu netinhlangano letahlukahlukene bagubhele lusuku ehotela lase Happy Valley ezulwini lapho kukhulunyiswa kabanti ukuthi tinkinga letivalela noma-ke letincisha besifazane emathuba ukuthi bathuthuke kuliwa njani nato. Losabambe kuba ngundvunankulu lokhuluma esigabeni sekubamba kuba liphini ndvunankulu Pholile Shakhantu uthi kunika emantombazane besifazane emathuba ekusebenzisa i-internet netebuchwephesha kungasita ukuthi batithuthukise baqale nemabhizinisi.
By adopting e-commerce platforms to bring women entrepreneurs and trailers and new business opportunities, enabling them to enter traditionally male-dominated sectors and to allow them the flexibility to balance domestic care work, responsibilities, and paid work.
Lonxusele inhlangano yaka-United Nations kuleli George Wachira nalonxusele inhlangano yemava labamhlophe Tesislava Chumilova bathi kuba setulu kwesibalo sokuhlukubetana ikakhulukazi sekuhlukubetwa kwabomake kusamele kuliwe nako.
Gender-based discrimination harms everyone, women, girls, men and boys.
Both innovation and technology can be equalizers. They can provide access.
Tibalo titsi kwamanje besilisa basemathubeni lamanenge kunebesifazane ekungeneni etikhundleni. Etinzabeni namuhla ngengiyane emsimeni se-Happy Valley ezulwini.
Indvuna yelitikoleta sekhaya mfana Nkosilindiwe ithi solo lucalile uhlelo lwe-mopping exercise lelitiko selibhalitse eMaswati langedulu kwetinkhulungwane letisikhombisa babhalisela certificate tekudalwa. Indvuna bekhuluma ePhalamende ngesikhathi yetfula umbiko wokusebenta kwalelitiko kweminyaka timali wahulumende wa 2022-2023.
Emsebentini lochubekako endlini yabaye esikhulu lochutshwa ngemakomiti labuke kusebenta kwamatiko ahulumende wekudzingidza emaphakelo ematiko eminyakatimali wahulumende wa 2023-2024 lapho kuphinzwe kwetfulwe khona kutsi lamatiko asebente njani kumnyakatimali wa 2022-2023 indvuna yelitiko letasekhaya umfanenkosi Lindiwe wetfulile kutsi luhamba njani luhlelo lokuvakashela imimango lokubhalisa sive timphepha tebuve
7,895 wekubhalisa certificate ke bami lababhalisa certificate lesisingema late births bese labathethe tichaza buve babe 4,090 bese ke labathethe certificate tekuthathana letemteko nje kakhulu babe 536
emalunga lelikomiti abesadzingidza lombiko wendvuna
la endlini ke kwakhulunywa indzaba yema-travelling documents kwaba nesicelo lesicelwa ngilendlu ukuthi akusale kuba naluhlobo lunye lwalama-travelling documents.
Chairperson, sinendzaba lebuhlungu kukhona abantu labafike la even sekuphele iminyaka lebandi kakhulu bo 54 years umuntu ahleti la even utholakale ukuthi ude usho linye liphepha lekuhlala
sithi ke Nkosi yami ayimane buyele litiko liyakwenza le mopping basitakele kakhulu abantu lamaceleni kwethu nje bomakhelwane bebasho awusitakele ngoba lelive linye
indvuna yetiko letasekhaya kubheke ukuthi yetfule umbiko wetimphendvulo letibhaliwe kuleli komiti ngelilanga lesihlanu Atinzabente Eswatini TV kubika Samkel Suekhoza nginambongwa Dube eParliament.
Indvuna yelitiko letemfundvo Lady Howard ithi imncintiswano yokubhala ema-essays ngekugucugucuka kwesimo selitulu besukunyiswe yinhlangano yelibhayibheli kuleli Bible Society Eswatini utawusita ekuvuleni tingcoco tabafundzi lokungaba nemthelela lomuhle emsebentini wabo wesikolwa. Lomsebenti usukunyiswe ehhotela lasesibane ezulwini.
Umphathi wenhlangano yelibhayibheli kuleli iBible Society Eswatini Dr. Ncebe Mbulu uchaza kabanti ngalomsebenzi wokubhala ama-essays etindzabeni tegucugucuka kwesimo selitulu.
Sine siyobuka lokuthathu ukuthi ama-facts climate change are well presented, reference to the word of God is well made, and kwesithathu sibuka ukuthi research is well done. La kufuna site khona ama-sources ethu so asayitha kahle ngiloko lesitabe sibuka ukuthi bantwana basendele kona. We have very good prizes lesitawa phabona abantwana umntwana le ise yakhe itaba inhle kakhulu in the country. They will ask ukuthi bamhoste ku forum ema publishers that will be in Zambia first week of November. Lo top 20 wema essays ethu batawusakhela incwadzi ngawo.
Indvuna yelitiko letemfundo Lady Howard ithi lo msebenzi wokubhala ama-essays utawenda abantwana besikolwa bente kahle tifundweni tabo.
Lama skills lama research skills labatawathola labantwana ezi basebenta lendzaba yaka climate change atabasita nakuletinye tifundvo ngoba lo mfana kusho ukuthi skills sakhe sitawucecesheka lesi seku researcher ngoba uma usesikolweni vele uphila ngayo i-research uyaphuma uyofuna tintfo ukuthi lokhu kungiko yini shothi nje le skill lebatawuphuma naso la sebatasi apply nakulamanye ama subjects.
Umfundzi Nkosephayo Likheli ubonga ukuthi nanabo babani labasha bakhunjulwe tindzabeni letifana naleti.
We really appreciate imizamo leyentiwa ngu-Bible Society nalamanye ematiko lasebentisana nawo ukuthi nathi as youth singasaleli ngephandle in this country because we are also the future leaders of this country.
Lovele enhlanganweni naka-UNICEF noNtobeko Dlamini usulicwaningo lolwentiwa kulenhlangano lukhomba ukuthi bantwana bayakhinyabeteka kakhulu etindzabeni tegucugucuka kwesimo selitulu. Etindzabeni kubika Fortune Dlangamandla nginamuzi Mkhonta sesezulwini.
Indvuna yelitiko letekulima Jabulani Mabuza ithi ngemaphakelo eminyakatimali wahulumende wa 2023-2024 lelitiko litawusebenta luhlelo lokucinisekisa ukuthi abalimi bayafinyelela ekutfoleni timali ikakhulukati labo labafise ukucala emabhizinisi yetekulima. Lolu hlelo lwatiwa ngekuthi i-Eswatini Agricultural Development Fund. Indvuna beyikhuluma ngesikhathi yetfula umbiko wemnyaka wekusebenta kwalelitiko eParliament.
Indvuna yelitiko letekulima Jabulani Mabuza ngesikhathi vele ngaphambi kwelikomiti lelibuke kusebenta kwalelitiko endlini yabaye esikhulu kwetfula umbiko wekusebenta walelitiko eminyakatimali wahulumende wa 2022-2023 lapho kuphindze kwadzingidvwa khona emaphakela lomnyakatimali wahulumende wa 2023-2024 ivetelele likomidi kutsi kulomnyaka lelitiko litawuchubeka nekusebenta tinhlelo letawutfutfukisa tekulima eveni.
Sikhonile ke bahlonishwane kokuthi sende kanye nani Agricultural Development Fund lesikutusako kakhulu letawubambisa ema-farmers kakhulu ngoba kuba lukhuni ikakhulukazi ngalanga ka-agriculture uthola imali kuma-financial institutions ema-regulations bahlonishwa basiphasisele ngaDisemba sesiyendile ne-agreement ne-financial institution sekaba kucala nje kuyi-roll out le program ne-Agricultural Development Fund.
Emalunga lelikomidi abesakhulumisa lo mbiko wendvuna.
Indzaba yekuhlelisa i-corridor 9 yeseMozambique yeSwaziland, which is critical.
Ngoba sesitawuhamba siyolima sibone ama-challenges especially ku-South emakhaya siyakhala sivele bengayo le northern ayikabi ukuleneka nabafathi sibonile ukuthi ukhonile umhlaba luthini-ke ihlelo lalo mnyaka lo sibe khona lesive sengonyama kwakhe lemuva ukuthi ngesikhathi sekulima nakule migazeli
Indvuna yelitiko letekulima kubheke ukuthi yetfule umbiko wetimphendvulo letibhaliwe kuleli bandla ngaleSihlanu. Etindzabeni yeSwatini TV kubika Samkelisiwe Khoza sephalamende.
Sihlalo welibandla lelikhetfo nemincele etinkhundla umfana Nkosi Mhlabuhlangene Dlamini sewethulela uphawu nesicubulo selikhetfo lolonyaka lokubusiswe ngemakhosi. Lesicubulo sithi ngetengasala nasakhalive letfu.
Njengoba umsebenzi welikhetfo lalonyaka leminyaka wa 2023 selivele lisukumile, libandla lelikhetfo nemincele yetinkundla selivele licalile kuvakashelwa imimango nayo imiphakathi kufundisa sive ngalo likhetfo. Kanti ngaye lesithafu sihlalo waleli banda umphane Nkosi Mhlabuhlangene usukumise lona luphawu naso sicubulo lesisawusebenziswa kulo likhetfo lalonyaka, sicubulo lesisukunyiswe nguye emakhosi lesithi ngetengasala nasakhalive letfu. Umphane Nkosi kuvetile ukuthi lukhetfo lelilungelo lalonke eliswati kumcwa ukuthi emaswati ahambe ngawo lo mthetho.
Ukhumbuta nje emaswati bongosi ukuthi lonke ilungelo lihambisana nesibophelo sakhona bongosi ngoba lesibophelo lesikhona sithi wena ngale lungelo lakho lolonalo lona kanye kumele wena uhloniphe lelo la makhelwane wakho njengoba yena makhelwane wakho yena kumele ahloniphe lelakho ilungelo lokusho ukuthi nawufuna wena kuyolalela lilungelo lakho lelo ngoba ufuna ukwathi ngcono kepha nakutawuba sekuba khona lotalinyathela lelo lungelo lakho lokho utabe kungekho emthethweni nakutawukwendeka kanjalo ngoba lokutaba semthethweni ukuthi nawunale lungelo ungahlala ekhaya nawufuna kepha ke ngeke bese soba semalungelweni ukuthi sotawenda taba tekokuthi lo munye angalisebenzisi lelungelo lakhe ngekukhululeka ngekweqiniso nangayo yonke lendlela.
Umphane Nkosi Mhlabuhlangene uphindze wacela wona amaswati ukuthi alibambise live kulomsebenzi welive lomgcoka kangaka bakhethe phela bomake bakhethe nabo bamfula bakhubatekile kude live lithuthuke enhlangothi tonke. Etindzabeni yeSwatini TV kubika Samkelisiwe Khoza nginasikhumbuzo Dlamini ezulwini.
Kubalulekile ukuthi bafunzi bathi kabanti ngekuphepha emigwaqweni kungako kumele bafundziswe ngekuphepha basasebenzisa umgwaqo. Libandla lelingamele tekuchumana yeSicom ngekusebenzisana nelitiko lemisebenzi lemkhulu nekutfutsa basukumise umncintiswano wabafunzi lapho babheke ukuthi babhale indzatshana ngekuphepha kubantwana emigwaqweni.
Lo mncintiswano wokubhala indzaba ngaphansi kwesihloko lesithi asewuticabange ungulelikhulu lichawe futhi injongo yakho kukwenta imigwaqo umhlaba wonke ibe ngulephephile kubantwana. Bhala incwadzi uyibhekise emuntwini side umchazele ukuthi ngumaphi emandla langetulu futhi lamakhulu ebe ungawadzinga kude le njongo yakho ifezeke. Mabhalane lomkhulu eToroti emsebenzi emkhulu nekutfutsa leyo kamelelo elisekela lakhe Nhlanhla Motha ubonge ukuthi bafunzi baboniswe bomcoka bekusebenzisa umgwaqo ngekubhala letindzatshana.
It is campaigns of this nature that must be staged to expound the call for greater road safety awareness for all. It is always pleasing to partner with great industry players to nurture the young mind and encourage them to take an interest in alleviating social ills in the society, like road traffic crashes that can hinder their growth.
Kanti lo bekamelele umphathi waka Escom ozithakatha uthi babone ukuthi asebabone lwathi lobafunzi ekusebenziseni umgwaqo.
With their imaginary powers, we believe that our children will share recommendations on how our roads in Eswatini can be made safe, especially for them.
Thembani Dlamini lokuxhumanisa libandla lokuphepha emgwaqweni uchaza ngesimo setingoti temgwaqo eveni.
With education, that is where we try to impart knowledge on road safety to all road users. So here we are saying that everyone who's using the road must at least do something towards reducing accidents.
Kanti ke losuku lokugcina ngomhla ka-17 enyangeni yamabasa 17 April kulomnyaka etinzabeni ngengiyani emsebenzini se-Mountain View eMbabane.
Inyuvesi yakuleli i-University of Eswatini ngekubambiswa libandla lelibuke imfundo nephakeme i-Eswatini Higher Education Council seyicale lohlelo lokubuka tifundvo telenyuvesi ukuthi ingabe tihambisana yini nesikhathi samanje ukuthi abafundzi abaphotfula kule nyuvesi batokhona ukuthi sebenta nekugadza kucashwa. Lisekela lemphatsi wale nyuvesi Professor Justice Twala lithi le nyuvesi seyikukhandze kufanele ukuthi etifundweni tayo sale bafundzi bangasafundzi nje kuphela kodwa sale bakwenda lokho labasuke bakufundza.
Lisekela lemphatsi wenyuvesi lakuleli Professor Justice Twala uchaza kabanti ngobumcoka bekubuketwa kwaloko lokufundzela abafunzi kule nyuvesi.
Bantwana incumbi bathi nabaceda kufundza kwanze ukuthi abayitholi nemsebenzi. So siteke kutawubuketa ukuthi yini lesingakwenda siyunivesi kuze ukuthi lesi kufundisako kuphindze kusebenze nabaphuma baye emsebenzini noma bakhona ukuthi casha into emsebenzini dengakhona kubenda abaphili. Sisafundisa bantwana kufuneka ukuthi basebenze ngetandla baphindze bentela amabhizinisi lesi kufundisako bakwende ibhizinisi basafunza bathi bayale ngaphandle babe sebanalo lwati lokuthi bende emabhizinisi tonke tinhlelo lesinato tekufundisa e-university.
Umphathi welibandla lelibuka imfundo lephakeme kuleli Eswatini Higher Education Council iSheikh Dr. Loretta Mkonta uthi kutawusebenziswana nalabo labomkantshubovu kulomsebenzi.
Lokufaka ekhathi nekureviewa onke ema-programs a-UNESCO. UNESCO has about 78 programs. So kufuna si-recruite abantu, funa si-recruite abantu labangema-experts in each of those areas. Lama programs labawa-offerisha. So kudathatha isikhathi sesingangenyanga plus ukuthi sikwende lokho.
Leli bandla kuyaye ukuthi njalo njengemva kwetinyanga letintsatfu bese likhipha luhla lwemakolishi kuleli lavumelekile kusebenta etindzabeni. Kubika Fortune Dlangamandla ngisehotela sesibane sami ezulwini.
Tangoma delitolo tithi iseve singaphaphuleki kwamnyalo ngesiphepho lesingucyclone Freddy lokubikwa ukuthi singahle sibuye eveni laseMozambique. Dumsani Sithole sangoma selitolo uthi mancane kakhulu emathuba ukuthi angafika lapha eSwatini cyclone Freddy.
Eveni akangwane kude lokungakanani lesingakusho ngaye ukuthi la kwenda kobona ucishe njena obutha konke lokungacishe kuba imfudla ngenyana lengabe siyayithola udade ke kwecene usho ukuthi mhlambe emathuba ke ukuthi singaba nako lokubade imfudlana nase kwece asangenile onland le Saturday usho ukuthi mathutshana mhlambe sesingaba nawo ukuthi likhona imfudlana lesingathithola ecishe letingathi yaphila ukusuka kusande kwanyalo ngoba khona.
Tangoma delitolo tithi isive singaphaphuleki kwanyalo ngacyclone Freddy kanike sive sitawatiswa nakungaba nelushintsho athuke yangena lapha ekhaya lo cyclone Freddy etindzabeni ngengiyani msibi ngisembabane.
Kwezemidlalo, inhlangano ledlalisa umdlalo wobhukusha lapha eveni seyithumise abaceceshile ababili balomdlalo lekunguMakhore locecesha licembu leGriffin kanye nameluleki Simelane locecesha licembu lePelicans ngemuva kokuthi bakhetfwe ekomitini lelibuke kusebenta kanye nekudlalisa umdlalo wokubhukusha emhlabeni pheceleti World Aquatics Technical Officials. Labaceceshi lababili nyalo basesigabeni sekuthi bangadlalisa imidlalo yangephandle International Officials baphindze babambe imihlangano sikolwa yokufundzisa imitsetfo yalomdlalo. Mengameli wenhlangano yalomdlalo Herman Jele uthi lokhu bebafisa ukuthi kwenteke eminyakeni lemibili letako kodwa akusheshe kwenteka lokuyinkhomba ukuthi lo mdlalo uyathuthuka sibili. Jele ucela labaceceshi lababili ukuthi bendlulise lwati kulabanye abaceceshi. Kapteni ulikhethelo lesive lalomdlalo Simanga Dlamini uthi bathi inhlambi talomdlalo kunyenti labatakuzuza kakhulukati yendzabeni yemitsetfo lemisha yalomdlalo. Labaceceshi lababili nabo bathi batimisele kutfutfukisa live kule minyaka lemini labatayihlala kuleli komiti baphindze bakhulise lizinga lalomdlalo lapha eveni. Kukhetfwa kwalabaceceshi ekomiti lemhlaba kube sento sekucala lapha eveni kanti batawuhlala kuleli komiti kusukela eminyakeni losetulu kude kube kuseminyakeni wa 2026. Ichubekile imidlalo ye-M10 Premier League itolo licembu le-Young Buffaloes litfolene itulu neNsingizini Hotspurs. Lo mdlalo udlalelwe enkundleni yakalanga kanti i-Young Buffaloes incwebile ngamagoli lamabili ecanzeni. Emagoli e-Buffaloes ashaywe nguNjabulo Maziya kanye na-Ali Mathe. Lokuncoba lo mdlalo i-Buffaloes seyinamaphuzu langu-40 emidlalweni lengu-18 leyidlalile kanti isendzaweni yesibili kulokho. Sitibeka lapho temidlalo sitindzaba tetfu ngaleto temidlalo asibahlole temakethe sitabuye sitawuchubeka nehlelo.
Why freedom?
Some people might think that freedom is not their right anymore. We need to remind people that we have the right to be free.
I always felt my freedom is constrained. I couldn't choose what I want to wear. I couldn't choose if I want to be religious or not.
We must free ourselves from the expectations that are on us.
I feel very lucky that so many women in my industry have paved the way before me. As a young woman in this industry, to be met with grown men around me all the time, giving me decisions to make and questions to answer, and I feel comfortable saying, no, I don't want to do that.
I couldn't say what I want to say, so it was a fight to be who I want to be.
You know, when I was born, there were only just a little over 2 billion people on the entire planet. Talk about freedom. There was so much room.
Lack of freedom in my life pushed me towards the nature and the mountains.
We have 8 billion people now.
I associate freedom with happiness and freedom to do what I like and love, but I also associate it with freedom to feel not so great too.
For me, the biggest expression of freedom is crying.
For me, the biggest expression of freedom is to open my own path in the mountain.
The ultimate expression of freedom is to finally accept who we are. For freedom to be meaningful, we have to live with the awareness that there's a lot of other people sharing this planet with us.
I've learned how strong women can be when we're together and united. Freedom is an important word.
It's strong,
Poetic, heroic.
I want you to breathe it. Freedom. We must understand what it really means.
We must speak up. We must listen.
We must learn.
And we must act. Together. Happy International Women's Day.
Pamelato, caring for women since 1967.
Asibenze sinimukele sikuvusele nawo losanza kusivulela besivudela ukuthi sigabe sikhulumisana namake Joyce Gama lo ngumabhalane wayo inhlangano yelithango labomake njengoba kumele ukuthi kulempela somvo impela somvo lenkhulu futhi njengoba luthango luyakhona ehlane lapho khona kunemicimbi lomkhulu wamakhosi webugani utabubanjelo khona kusukela ngalesihlanu ukuthi kube ngilisonto futhi kumele ukuthi amaveni lamabili umsebenzi bobanjelo esigodleni ebuhleni lokusokuchubekela khona ehlane sivele sinaye make Joyce kodwa sichazela kabanti nje ngawo lo msebenzi ukuthi ubaleka kanganani siyakhumula ukuthi evikini eliphelile wasichazela wasinikeza sithomese ukuthi bomake baphuma ngetinkani emsebenzini lobo banjelo khona ebuhleni njengoba bebalenganiselwa etinkulungwaneni leti 10 ethemba ukuthi nakulempela somvo bomake batawuphuma baye khona kulo msebenzi asivusela make Joyce siyabonga ukuthi ubuyile namhla ekseni vele ngiyethemba ukuthi solo niyaphizitela nehle nenyuka nilungiselela wona umsebenzi ingaba vele mhlawumbe amalungiselelo nje ahamba kanjani umsebenzi omkhulu this weekend.
Angibonge msakade ngivusele nakuye umbukeli ekhaya ngiqale nje ngikusho ukuthi ngiqondzise ukuthi luthango libutho akusiyo inhlangano kufuna ukuthi sive sathi lokho ukuthi libutho shothi ngesilumbi bathi regiment lokusho ukuthi leli butho leli letinhlangano tingena phasi kwaleli butho ngoba leli butho lisambulelo saletinhlangano lelasunguleka ke nga 1968 nga 1966 kufika ndiphethe nje sevele lisungulekile leli butho lisungulwe inkosi isobhuza wesibili kokuthi kutawubukwa tindzaba ekhathi letifaka umnotho nato te-culture nato tenhlala kahle lengingakusho nje ukuthi kuhamba kahle kakhulu soloku sisuke ebuhleni bekunene sekwetanyuke ukuthi kulungiswe lokulungiswako solo emabandla ehlanyuka ayalungisa sive asibe nesiciniseko luthango ukuthi umkhosi wasehlane webugano uhamba kahle lengingakusho nje ngathi phezulu komkhono kulolonke lakangwane kulolonke lithango bekunene vele tinkhalo tibheke khona ehlane
ikubuda nje make Joyce kuva nje ukuthi ngabe vele mhlambe umsebenzi lo nalo baleke kanganani nje ke lelibutho leluthango sasibonile lelibutho liphume ngetinkani esigodleni ebuhleni ingabe vele mhlambe ngumsebenzi lo nalo umcoka kanganani ukuthi vele lithango libe ingcenye yawo
umcoka kakhulu lo msebenzi ngoba uhlanganisa bomake bashiyelana ligwayi lokushiyelana ligwayi ke sikhuluma sinfu ukuthi nayitolo ngishito ukuthi sicholo semfati siyaxolo umuntu nje akunakude imfundiso letawuhle ayithola vele ugcina angasiye lo kahle kodwa umuntu nakahle athola imfundiso ngala nangala ugcina axolekile angumuntu lo kahle ngaleso sizathu ke nakuto te culture ngikhulumile itolo ukuthi kuba netindzaba tabo cultural exchange mhlawumbe nakulamanye emave lafana nathi ngaba ngisadakhe ngaba international family lokho ukuthi sonke sesingumndeni njengoba phela emakhosi asayina tivumelwane tekuthi asibambisane takamhlaba netaka sadakhe ngakho ke kuyabanjiswana kudoda emasiko nemihambo nangekuthi ke kuphinze kuvakashelwana njengaloku nje netivakashi letiqhamuka lena le titala nakhona kuhle kuba khona ema-events lafana nato tintfo letinjengalete culture letitama letinye nekuthi tisite ikakhulu nekhuphula umnotho welive njengaloku nje emaganu ayakhona kwakha jam, ayakhona kwenda tinsipho tekugeza nako konke. Mhlawumbe ngekuchubeka kwetintfo tisachubeka sambile nje sakulambo Thailand lapho bafike basikhombisa nekuthi singakha ne wayini. Kungakhiwa nje lokunengi out of emaganu nyalo kusakhiwa emaswidi kwakhiwa bo-oyili bekugcobisa yonke lento lengakhutsata bekunene noma-ke sekulanga lekugcina imessage lengitenayo eluthangweni siyacela kutsi tindvuna letitana lelibutho tibhalise makugibela libutho tibhalise wonke logibelako ebhasini nekuthi ke bekunene siyabonga ukuthi vele emabhasi akhona ngoba sithi ke nalama truck noma akhona ayite kutothwala leyo mithwalo bekunene noma ke mhlawumbe lapho kunetindzawo lesetishelela kepha ke vele siniketwe emabhasi lesibonga kakhulu kokuthi sibonga kuwo emakhosi ukuthi luthango vele lutawuhamba ngemabhasi lesikhutsatako ngilokuthi nababhalisa ababhalise bese ubhala inombolo yelicingo lakhe eceleni ngoba sendela ukuthi noma umuntu usekaphathekile kwetindvuna takhe tati ukuthi lo nangu nenombolo yakhe naye sicela lokho kwenteke bekunene ngoba kutasenda noma sisebende malula uma kukhona letinombolo kunalesikubuketile-ke sisenda imihlangano ukuthi kuba nabomake betimakethe nabalaba makethako siyakhutsata ukuthi bomake bente timakethe kepha uma sekwemukela bayasukuma-ke nabo bavele bemukele ngoba nabo benkhosi sikhutsateke ukuthi nabo ababhalise babe nalo ilida yabo laba betimakethe kokuthi ababhalise titobonakala letinombolo phindze futhi bekunene sifisa ukuthi naba bema-ministries ematiko ngoba phela nabo sebahlangana njengoba benta ticheme ngeticheme tabo sikhutsata kona ukuthi nabo ababhalisi kutaba-ke kuyikhona-ke le moto yase-Home Affairs lele khumbi lele coordinator wonke lo msebenzi abalethe utabe akhona amabhalane wasehlane lo la ekhathe ekhumbini balethe-ke labo makana bafika nje behlangana ama-truck noma ngaleto timoto lebetangato mabhasi bavele le ndvuna bese iletha lamagama alabantu letenabo kungakacali kwethulwa kutawuthi nje nakuthiwa sekuyethulwa nebekuneni sibe emagama sesinawo onke lanetinombolo tetincingo mhlawumbe-ke lo yakhe inombolo elicingo mhlawumbe angayibhalisa mhlawumbe yaloyo losihlobo sakhe ngoba sifuna lokuthi tintfo tibe seqopheleni lelisetulu ngoba live selithuthukile.
Kubuda nje makaJoyce ukuthi siye sibone emkhosini nomhlanga ukuthi kuye kube naletinhlangano leti etifundzise imbali ngetihloko letihlukahlukene lifake ekhathi nje kuhlubeteka ngetebulili GBV ingavele mhlambe lokho kuba khona yini emkhosini webukana ukuthi nani nilibutho lelithango kube khona nje leso sikhashana lenibanaso nifundziswe nibomake ngato donate indzaba leti lekuhlubeteka naletinye nje tindzaba
kuba khona lena emathendeni ngoba sisiliguma lethu ngolela silele khona kusegumeni kuyafundziswa sitaba nabo nje be-commerce nabo batofundzisa ngato letindzaba temabhizinisi betinkhundla litiko letinkhundla tofundzisa ngato letindzaba tetikhwama tabo RDF phindze futhi bakakhulisa umfana bafundzise ngokuthi umfana ukhula njani phindze futhi nalaba betemgwaqo baka road safety bete batofundisa njengaloko kunalomcimbi nje uhanjwa emgwaqweni noma sekubuyelwa emakhaya kuhanjwa emgwaqweni ukuthi kuzame kuncipha tingoti noma ke ikhona i-security vele ihlala ikhona bekunene sicizekile lengakusho nje lengaphindze futhi ngikukhutsate letifundvo tethu ticala nga7 ekseni kubese ke libutho lifuna ukuthi bhu lihambe liye lendasi lapho lithi liyofuna kwamukela tingubo kani phela tonke tintfo tiyehlelwe tibe nesikhathi kulungisiwe ke ukuthi la kuyomukelwa khona kutawuvulwa nganayini ngalo mgcibelo ekseni stabeke sesendile letifundo ngoba sicala nga7 luthango lukhona ukuthi lufakwe leyo milayeto lebatala naye ekhaya letabaphilise emakhaya phindze futhi bathi bangemukela babuye kuchujekwe mhlawumbe kuphele lapha ke kumbe kubo 10:30 seluyasuka ke luthango luyavunula ke silungisile bekunene kuthi kube nemibhobho ngoba phela siyathuthuka letawuzama ukuthi libutho lihlangane lonke ngoba kuvamisile ukuthi mase kuthiwa kuyogidwa so bathe phumani bomake phumani bomake abasaphumi ngekhathi emathendeni labanye bathi ngitemnel here mina ngite ngite umhelwane bonkosi siyethembisa kulungisiwe konke kuphela nangabe lithango litawuhloniphana kuma kahle malayini kubedela lo thina samukele afune kuyophinza kuze kuthi litonela lonke luthango kuletipho lesitiphiwe ingwenyama Mswati wesithathu nene bekunene besicela inhlonipho kulolithango kwekugcina lengakusho noma ngasi kwegcina ngoba umsakade mhlambe kukhona la ngakubuta kuthi sihlelile kuthi bomake balale ngema regions lama regions ke besilungise ukuthi kutawubhalwa kubhalwe lokuthi bakahoho batawulala lapho kutawube kubhalwe khona ebuhleni ngoba ngalesi Swati lo manzini hoho shiselo akekho kule micimbi le kubalwa letigodlo bese kuthi bakamanzini kutawubhalwa labayolala khona kuthi enkabezweni manzini wonke lo bese kuthi baseshiselweni bayolala lapho kubhalwe khona ukuthi Mpumalanga bese njalo base ungathi ke eshiselweni imbangweni bese kuthi ke iMpumalanga Lubombo bekunene bese ke sitawubhala kutawubhalwa lapha eDulu sendela ukuthi siyathuthuka ngoba itolo lithango belubhicana libhucane ukhanze sekulahleka kwama lo sowulahlekelene nalomunye sekunjani nekuthi ke bonkosi siyacela eluthangweni kuthi uma ngabe sekugcwele emathendeni ngoba sibekile ukuthi tindvuna letibuke ema region titaba responsible noma tibuke emathende ngema region bese tisebenza netindvuna tato leleti iphethe lemiphakathi lesicela ukuthi tende umsebenzi wato wekwekhuta libutho nekuthi aliyali litiyale libutho litiphathe kahle bathathe nema messages lawo lachamukako ngema order laphuma eTulu kuye kahle nje kwehle kahle umsebenzi utohamba kahle besicela ke ukuthi vele sibambisane naletindvuna telithango noma ngabe sekuyaphunywa kuyodliwa kube ngito letigqugqutela bomake noma sekuyavunulwa tishashe tigqugqutele bomake kuthi tonke tintfo titowendiwa ngesikhathi nekuthi ke imemedile indvuna bekunene yasehlane kepha ke kuceliwe ukuthi ngizame ukugqugqutela ukuthi lena bomake basheshe bafike lapho kusukelwa khona kungatothi timotolo tihambe sekuhalele tihambane lithango nguloko lengakusho kwanyana
ngifuna ukubuta nje make Joyce ngayo indzaba yetemphilo ngisiyathi lokho ukuthi vele litiko letempilo solo liyachubeka nje nekusikhutsata ukuthi vele sicaphelisise njengoba umkhuhlane COVID-19 usesekhona last week nje sibonile ibika iMinister of Health ukuthi sishiye abantu lababili engabe kulona msebenzi lona ngalo ukuthi vele kuyeye kuphume abantu labanengi kuba nespecifics lesinengi ngabe vele mhlambe leto tetempilo ntihambisa imbili indvele batabe bakhona indvele bona labo betempilo mhlambe bajove labo labafuna ukujovela umkhuhlane COVID-19 ngabe dime kanjani vele Tempilo?
Ngingete ngagcila kakhulu kuloko ngoba bompetha babo ngilete impilo kodwa lengingakusho ngokuthi baba khona bende konke lokuseqopholweni labo lelisetulu nanyalo bavele bashito ukuthi licepho letaba setulu bangete tonke tintfo letitsingeka ukuthi tisite libutho ekutheni mase kukhona lonemkhuhlane nekuthi nje kuto tindzaba taka COVID vele bayakanekisa babe khona balusite litsango ngato tonke tingoni letikhona bakuphatha konke kokuthi nalonjani athole kusitakala.
Okay. Kubuta nje majesu ukuthi ngalo lesihlanu emabhasi atawusuka ngabo banje tikhathi elibutho kubheka ukuthi libe ngabo bantu lapho lithathwa khona ngamabhasi.
Kubekiwe bekunene ukuthi leli butho lisheshe lisuke ekseni. Tikhathi letiye tibekwe kuba ngilabo 10 ekseni. Kwendelwa lokuthi phela libutho liba nako lokuthi kuyakuthiwa swazi time bekunene. Ngoba phela nabo transport officer kunema logistics lebaye bawende kepha nabo balungisile tonke tintfo. Sethemba ukuthi kutawusheshe kuhanjwe etinkundleni ngoba yonke info kuyendeka ibe nema challenges netihibe letsite kodwa ke kutanyiwe bekunene ukuthi tonke tintfo tihambe kahle.
Kugcina nje kubuta nje make Jesu ukuthi ingabe mhlambe lo tawufisa nje unaye kuba ukukhicita nje lemkhicito ekusebenzisa wona lamagama ingabe angakhona ukukufundzela kuphi lokho ubalile ukuthi sekwakhiwa bojamu nyalo kuyabhakwa ngisho namascones timvu letiningi nje takhiwa ngawe emagama ingabe vele mhlambe make lo tawuba nitshisekele nje ukuthi naye vele akhona kutikicitela timvu letiwenda kanjani.
Ngetindzaba tekuthi kunematiko ematiko ngilelo tiko linemsebenzi walo lendzaba lena nje litiko laka agriculture letekulima shothi le ngaphasi kwaka home economics kunengi lesibambisane nako silithango ka home economics ekutheni kwendiwe leto tintfo mhlawumbe nalokunye lokunengi bobhatata kubhakwe ngabo nato lendzaba tebukani leli nasibukeke kuloku lokucondzene nje nale sithelo lesi ema products maningi laphuma khona mhlawumbe la ekuthi ngaba nelitiko letekulima lelini sitako ukuthi mhlawumbe nifaka waphi ama ingredients noma nenda njani uma nicala ufuna kwenda lo jam nimpheka kanjani mhlawumbe nalokunye masiya ngekuthuthuka nemajuice mhlawumbe akufuna ukuthi ahambe agcine endiwe nabo labo wayini mhlawumbe ke kunengi lokungagcina kwendiwe ngoba kuba nema studies lendiwako etintfweni leti njengaleti nasithekela kulamanye emave ngoba siye lapho basithekela khona ukuthi ningenda njani kuze bomake bathuthuke.
Kugcina nje make Joyce ngiyakhumula ukuthi evikini leliphelile waveta indzaba ukuthi kuvunulwa kanjani wakhala ngendzaba yokuthi abantu labasha nabo sebavunula njengelithango mhlambe njengaba nje kumagama ekugcina nje ekuyala lona lithango kusayiwa khona emkhothini lomkhulu.
Siyacela bekunene sicela kakhulu bomake emakhaya ngoba yonke into ekhaya kunamake nababa kuthi nakuphuma letimbali nje bekunene tekhuteni emakhaya uma setiya emkhosini weluthango ngoba phela nale tipho leti letendiwe bekunene titendelwe luthango atikendelwa imbali nayo iba niyaso sikhathi kuthi nakunemhlanga nakhona kubukwa imbali siyacela nje ukuthi bangenti lokuthi bese bavunula tidwashi bayaphambatisa babuyise emahiya bese bafaka inzambo bangena elayinini. Lokunye ngibonga ukuthi ungikhumbute nje emsakade indzaba yalabakhubatekile nabo batabe bakhona bahlale baba khona balungiselo ukuthi nabo babe khona indzawana lapho bemakhona bese bayakhona kwemukeliswa nabo gogo silungisile ukuthi babe neline labo leli labo gogo nje njoba ukhulumile njengetempilo lapha kusethiwe kokuthi nabo betempilo batabe bakhona lapho kwemukelwa khona kuze kuthi babone bomake phela bese badzinga lawa maphilisi noma lawo mandi noma ini lokudzingekako kulungisiwe kahle impela.
Ngiyavakala sibakhona bakaJoyce kuba nathi lo mhlehlelo nembukele sawutivele ngempela somvole emcwale nana lenkhulu ekakhulukazi kilo libutho lelithango njoba yibonke kuyiwa khona emkhosini webugano lodaba khona esikoleni ehlana. Sibahlola emakethe sitabuya ne traffic update. Asimza sinimukele ngo5 minutes before 7 o'clock lesikhathi sesitawubuka simo semgwaco na Sergeant Kule asekuvusele eMagwabane lomhla ekseni kuhambeka kanjani emigwacweni live.
Anguvusele Thombeni ngivusele umbukelo elihlelo sivuka namhla simo selitulo sinhle sibili uyakhanya noko ke sisihle simo selitulo siyawukhumbula ukuthi imigwaco yethu eminingi ayikho esimeni lesikahle abashayeli-ke kuyakhuthaza ukuthi akabe ngilawo lakhaliphile ngokucwenza indlela sekabonile lawo ma-potholes and isiqiniseko sokuthi isendo lathi asithatha siyawena ukuthi yena nalomnyeni osebenzisa umgwaco aphephe. Kanti-ke etibaneni lethu lemgwaco lapha eTulo edolobheni laseMbabane, etibane lethu lapha eMangwaneni asisebenzi. Siyawukhumbula ukuthi itibane lethu letakhelene netindawo lapho kunesikole sebantwana besikole liphansi kakhulu, asibanake-ke sinikede wona-ke mathuba nalabanye bashayeli. Kanti-ke umgwaco wethu usuka lapha-ke nasengwenya ubheke khona lapha endasi kumathapha, umgwaco lo MR3 lapha eTulo eMangwaneni. So i-cooling station ikhona lapho, kunemaloli nje lo ngikhuluma lemile lathethe wona umzila longasencele. Le into-ke ukuthi-ke imodolo letincane tisebenzise wona-ke umzila longasekudla, nakhona siyakhuthaza ukuthi litubane alibengelelo leliphansi kakhulu. Kanti kunjalo khona kuwo umgwaco lomkhulu lobheka khona lapha kumathapha, bakhona labo labasebenza emgwacweni labasilungiselako, bahambe-ke bawunciphisa umgwaco etindzawo ngokwehlukahlukana. Siyawunaka-ke leto timpawu njengekubekelwa kwato. Kanti-ke edolobheni lakumathapha tisebenza kahle itibane tethu, kanti kamanzini titalati tethu solo tiyalungiswa na siyasitalati lesisuka lapha endasi satellite sibheke khona lapha eTulo Pick and Pay. Lokukhona namuhla kuvalwe lo mzila lowelela ngesheya lapha ezakhele, kwenta-ke ukuthi imodolo iyancikisana kulo mzila lo ngenako ekhathi edolobheni na usuka khona i-satellite. Nakhona siyakhuthaza bekunene kusasinikeza nemathuba bese kuthi masala esikhundleni uvaliwe ngalokuphelele, kanjalo naso sitalati sethu lesilapha endasi Kelly Street naye uvaliwe ngalokuphelele. Nakhona edolobheni laseMbabane uvaliwe Somhlolo Road, aphinde avalwe namakhosini Drive. Siyawulandzela timpawu lesibekele kuyona leticondzisako imigwaco lesingayisebenzisa kwesikhashana. Bese kuthi lapha endasi eshiselweni nakhona bekunene nawubheka khona esalije umgwaco solo uyakhiwa lapho, asende isiqiniseko sokuthi litubane lethu siyalinciphisa. Kanti nakuye MR11 losuka khona inhlangano ubheke khona lapha endasi kalavumisa, kunetindzawo lapho ekhathi nekhathi lemgwaco ubheke wona ema-temporal speed humps. Siyawucela-ke kubashayeli abahloniphe kwatise ukuthi netincola letinkulu letingenela wona umgwaco, kanti kuyindzawo lelifundvu lapho. Nemfuyo-ke iyabonakala etifundeni telive, kanjalo nalapha elibonjeni siyawukhumbula bekunene ukuthi libutho limenyetiwe, sekuvele kuyaphithizela na ubheka khona elibonjeni. Asikhuthaze banikati bemfuyo ukuthi abayikhweshise imfuyo emgwaqweni, nathi senda njalo kuyikhweshisa imfuyo siyibeke endzaweni leyawuba ngilephephile. Kungathi khanzi-ke umnikati wemfuyo so uthathele imfuyo yakho ngokuthi nje iyajangaza emgwaqweni. Asende loko lokufanele bekunene sitawuphepha size semaswati siphephe netivakashi isihlalo live ngokukhanza imigwaco yethu ihlobile. Nalapha-ke nawusuka emaphikeni ubheke eThabankulu solo sisebenzisa naye isithole sithi awube kunene asicaphele njengoba umgwaco luncishisiwe, imotolo asikhona ukuphambana kulela bloho lelisakhele lona kwesikhashana, kepha-ke kwenza imotolo yinye ngesikhathi sinye. Nokuthi-ke sinake malangeni lamahle umthamo wethu imotolo sowusetulu nyala ekuseni, nelinani labo labahamba ngesinyawo lisetulu. Ngakho-ke ngaso sonke isikhathi sihlale siyihlonipha imithetho yemigwaqo, sihlonipha timpawu zemgwaqo. Kungaba ngiloko nje kuseni silifisele ilanga lelihle, sachubeka nemsebenzi wenu ngaso size semaswati sisifisele ilanga lelihle naliphephile sisebenzisa imigwaqo. Siyabonga kakhulu Sombele.
Sibonga Sergeant Kule ngaleyo mbiko. Kusele imizuzu lemibili kucisha insimbi esikhombisa asathe likhefu sibuye sichubeke nehlelo.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3 hash and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Welcome back. It's 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at our international news. Police in the ex-Soviet state of Georgia used tear gas and stun grenades early on Wednesday to break up a protest outside parliament against a draft law on foreign agents. The demonstrations broke out late Tuesday after lawmakers gave initial backing for the draft law reminiscent of Russian legislation used to pressure critics.
Chanting their country's name and refusing to back down, as tear gas and water cannons fill the air. The fierce standoff intensified between security forces and the thousands of Georgians that rallied in the capital, Tbilisi, after Parliament backed a controversial new law on foreign agents. Demonstrators believe it symbolizes an authoritarian shift and risks the former Soviet nation's hopes of EU membership, which Brussels is currently considering.
The law is Russian, as we all know. It has been implemented in Russia, it has been implemented in Belarus, and we don't want to be part of ex-Soviet Union. We want to be part of European Union, we want to be pro-West.
I came here because I know that my country belongs to Europe, but my government doesn't understand it. So we are here to protect our country because we don't want to be part of Russia again.
Critics have said it echoes Moscow's version of a foreign agents law in 2012. It has since been used to crack down on dissent. And passing this law would add Georgia to the list of post-Soviet states to have followed suit, including Belarus and Azerbaijan. Georgia's president has expressed her solidarity with the protesters and said she has no intention to support it.
I said from day one that I would veto this law, and I will veto it. No one needed this law. It came from nowhere. But maybe it was dictated by Moscow. It needs to go. It needs to be repealed any way you want. There is no way to send it to the Venice Commission, who knows very well what kind of law it is.
Many Georgians see Russia as an enemy after Moscow backed separatists in the breakaway Georgian regions of Abkhazia and South Ossetia, causing hundreds of thousands of Georgians to remain displaced.
Unions claimed some 3.5 million people took to the streets across France on Tuesday to protest against plans to raise the retirement age from 62 up to 64 amid nationwide strikes. The strikes are set to continue on Wednesday and beyond as unions vowed not to back down until French President Emmanuel Macron scraps the controversial reform plans.
After a day of historic mobilization, a vow to intensify the fight. Tuesday brought the sixth and largest day of demonstrations so far as protesters across France said no to President Emmanuel Macron's plan to raise the national retirement age from 62 to 64.
We are going on an unlimited renewable strike, as long as this reform has not been withdrawn by the government.
Despite some clashes on the fringes, protests were largely peaceful, and while the country was not quite brought to a standstill, transport services were severely disrupted, schools closed, and garbage left uncollected. With Macron apparently unmoved, French unions are calling for yet more action this week and next.
The President of the Republic's silence constitutes a serious democratic problem, which will lead to a situation that could become explosive. The union group will send a letter asking for an urgent meeting so that he withdraws his reform.
Macron's centrist party and its conservative coalition partners in the legislature say raising the retirement age is necessary to keep France's pension system solvent as its population ages. Opponents say the plan is a political choice aimed at reducing taxes on corporations and the wealthy, one that especially penalizes women and the working poor. The reform bill is currently being debated in the French Senate, where its proponents are seeking a vote by Sunday. Macron's coalition is hoping to have it passed into law by mid-March.
2 of the 4 U.S. citizens kidnapped after crossing the border into crime-plagued northeastern Mexico have been found dead, Mexican authorities said on Tuesday.
A casual trip across the border turned into a nightmare. 2 of the 4 American tourists kidnapped at gunpoint last Friday were found dead. Their 2 other companions were rescued and repatriated to the United States. Mexico's president said he was very sorry that this had happened in his country, adding that the police had taken one person into custody.
We send our condolences to the family and friends of the victims and to the people and the government of the United States.
While the US government has declined to give details to protect the victims' privacy, some media have identified the 4 Americans and said at least one of them had traveled there for cosmetic surgery. Shortly after they entered the town of Matamoros, gunmen fired on their minivan and herded them onto another vehicle before fleeing the scene. A female Mexican bystander was killed on the spot. It's believed the tourists got caught in the crossfire between rival drug cartels.
Attacks on U.S. citizens are unacceptable, no matter where or under what circumstances they happen. We will continue to work closely with the Mexican government to ensure justice is done in this case.
The kidnapping has put a spotlight on U.S. concerns over widespread gang violence in Mexico. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham on Monday said it was time to, quote, put Mexico on notice and pushed for legislation to designate some drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations.
The U.S. is reviewing new intelligence indicating a pro-Ukrainian group was behind the blast that ruptured the Nordstream pipeline last year, according to a report in the New York Times. However, Kyiv has already denied any government involvement.
It's an unsolved mystery that is fueling public speculation. Who was behind the September 2022 explosions? On Tuesday, the New York Times published an article saying new intelligence currently being reviewed by U.S. authorities indicated that a pro-Ukrainian group could be responsible for the attack. According to the report, those behind the blasts, which released gas into the Baltic, were Ukrainian or Russian nationals, or a combination of the two who opposed Russian President Vladimir Putin. However, the article added that they found no evidence of Ukrainian government implication in the incident. Ukrainian authorities also deny any involvement.
Without a doubt, Ukraine is absolutely not involved in the excesses on the pipelines. It doesn't make the slightest bit of sense.
Washington officials also refused to disclose the nature of the information, how it was obtained, and the strength of the evidence. Furthermore, Sweden, Denmark, and Germany have launched 3 separate investigations into the attack. During a news briefing, U.S. government spokesman Ned Price said Washington would wait for its European partners' investigations to conclude.
They've opened investigation into what has happened. Those investigations are ongoing. As we always do, we're going to let those investigations play out before we comment on any potential findings or conclusion.
This latest intelligence comes as Moscow called once again on the United Nations Security Council to independently investigate the incident.
The Republican-controlled U.S. House of Representatives launched an investigation on Wednesday into the Biden administration's decision to withdraw from Afghanistan in August 2021. Immigration experts and U.S. military who assisted in the evacuation testified that the chaotic pullout was due to decades of bad decision-making.
The final days of the U.S. conflict in Afghanistan were marked by chaos and death, as the rapid advance of the Taliban caught the U.S. military and State Department by surprise.
Because of the Biden administration's dereliction of duty, the world watched heartbreaking scenes unfold in and around the Kabul airport for the next 2 weeks.
Congressional Republicans are leading an investigation into the events of August 2021. Democrats argue that the groundwork for the chaotic withdrawal was laid by previous presidential administrations.
In the years preceding the 2021 withdrawal, the decision to engage in the direct negotiations with the Taliban at the exclusion of the Afghan government and the invitation to meet at Camp David conferred international legitimacy to the Taliban.
Congress is also asking why there is a backlog in processing visas for the tens of thousands of Afghans promised safety in return for assisting U.S. forces. Peter Lucier works for Team America Relief, an organization that has helped support evacuation efforts.
This is not the story of a Biden failure or a Trump failure.
This is a story of an American failure and the effect it has had and continues to have on Afghans.
Ultimately, about 122,000 people were airlifted out of Afghanistan in the days before the handover to the Taliban. But the immigration status for those Afghans who made it to the U.S. is still uncertain, and tens of thousands remain trapped in Afghanistan.
We wept as we listened to messages left by children pleading for our help.
U.S. service members also testified that unclear rules of engagement at Kabul airport left them defenseless, and alleged that ultimately led to the August 26 bombing, the deadliest day for Americans in Afghanistan in 10 years.
The withdrawal was a catastrophe, in my opinion, and there was an inexcusable lack of accountability and negligence. The 11 Marines, 1 sailor, and 1 soldier that were murdered that day have not been answered for.
U.S. lawmakers say the secretaries of state and defense will soon be asked to testify about their department's roles in the evacuation. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
A bipartisan group of U.S. senators on Tuesday unveiled a bill authorizing the Commerce Secretary to rein in technology products viewed as threats to national security, with a particular focus on Chinese-owned TikTok, an app used by more than 100 million Americans.
Scrolling on your phone using TikTok could soon be a thing of the past if you live in the US. As on Tuesday, a dozen senators unveiled a new bill, which, if passed, would authorize the Commerce Secretary to ban technology products viewed as threats to national security. While not explicitly aimed at TikTok, it's clear that the Chinese-owned app is a cause for concern.
So TikTok concerns me for a number of different reasons. One is the data that they have. Secondly is the algorithm and the control, who has the algorithm. Third is the broad platform. Influence operations, as we talked about previously, it's not only the fact that you can influence something, but you can also, turn off the message as well when you have such a large population of listeners.
In the US alone, TikTok has been downloaded over 200 million times, with 138 million monthly active users. And last year, the app generated nearly $6 billion in ad revenue in the US. TikTok said last week that a US ban on the app would amount to a ban on the export of American culture and values to the billion people who use their service worldwide. The app has come under increasing fire over fears that user data could end up in the hands of the Chinese government, and has already been banned in India, as well as on government devices in the European Union.
As part of southeast Turkey's struggle to recover from last month's earthquake, many are questioning why so many relatively modern buildings collapsed in 7.8 magnitude tremor, with some engineers pointing the finger at government policy.
A month on from the earthquake, piles of concrete and twisted metal tower over the roadsides in southeast Turkey's worst-hit towns and cities. Bodies are still buried inside. Millions of tons of debris are slowly being removed, but questions over the level of devastation are not going away. Survivors describe buildings liquefying as the tremors hit, each floor collapsing onto the next. Why did some buildings survive relatively unscathed while others collapsed? Hasan Aksungur is chairman of the Chamber of Civil Engineers in the city of Adana, close to the earthquake zone.
The
fact that the buildings next to those collapsed buildings, which were exposed to the same impact, were not demolished, shows that either the design, the implementation, or the control stages of these collapsed buildings were broken.
Critics of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan say his government repeatedly offered amnesties for illegal buildings, what Erdogan called zoning peace, allowing builders to skip crucial safety regulations. Millions of buildings were certified in this way.
Since 1985, there have been consecutive zoning amnesties. In the last zoning piece, in 2018, these buildings were given a building registration certificate without being subject to any control, without being subject to anything, by paying certain fees.
Yapı kayıt belgesi aldılar.
Before the earthquake hit, the government was mulling another building amnesty ahead of the May presidential election. Erdogan boasted of these amnesties during the 2019 election campaign, including on a visit to the province of Hatay, now one of the worst hit by the earthquake.
We have solved the problems of 205,000 of the citizens of Hatay with zoning peace.
The Turkish government has not responded to VOA requests for comment. Turkey's justice minister has highlighted that opposition parties also supported the building amnesties. And last month, President Erdogan accused rivals of exploiting the earthquake for political gain.
We know that some are rubbing their hands, waiting for the state and the government to fall under the ruins along with our people.
Erdogan has said the presidential election will go ahead in May. The earthquake response and what caused more than 45,000 people to lose their lives looks set to be a key issue as the incumbent president seeks a third term in office. Henry Ridgwell for VOA News.
Kenya in February announced a nighttime curfew in 6 countries and an amnesty for handing over illegal guns after a series of violent attacks from cattle rustlers and bandits in the northern Rift Valley. But just a few guns were turned in as herders say they need to protect themselves in remote areas that have little security.
Herders and traders throng to the livestock market in Kenya's northwestern town of Lodwar to buy what few sheep and goats are on sale. It's a rush to replenish stock killed by record drought and worsening theft of animals. Herder Peter Erot says in February, armed bandits stole from him more than 50 cattle and nearly 200 goats.
They're thieves with guns who steal our livestock day and night. Even yesterday, one tried to steal my goat. We caught him, but the police took him away.
Kenya in February announced a security crackdown after a spike in cattle rustling and bandit attacks that in the last 6 months have killed more than 100 civilians and 14 police in the northern Rift Valley region. The government deployed troops and authorities announced a 30-day nighttime curfew.
We have had bandits attack public service vehicles, but we have put the strategies in place to ensure that disruption today and every other day are interrupted.
Officials also declared an amnesty so people could hand in illegal weapons, but say just a handful were turned over. Herders say they need guns to protect themselves from attacks that frequently occur. The Lodwar Referral Hospital is full of gun-related injuries. Herder Nikamoy Kereng says rustlers shot him in the shoulder.
Throughout my life, this is how things have happened here. Every day, a person is killed and livestock is stolen. Every time there is a raid, we must stop them or pursue them with guns. That's the only way things work here.
The cattle raids have been spilling over the borders into Uganda and South Sudan, raising concerns that if not quashed soon, the problem will only get bigger. For David Lamoria in Lodwar, Kenya, Roderick James, VOA News.
In Somalia, the number of people forced to flee from drought and conflict has reached a new high of 3.8 million people. International organizations now warn hundreds of thousands more could follow in the coming months.
It's a story that's become all too common in Somalia. After the crops and cattle on their farm were decimated by drought, Faduma Ali and her 7 children were forced to flee towards the nearest city. A perilous week-long journey which they didn't all survive.
I fled my home after the drought hit our farm and we lost all our animals. We walked for 7 days. One of my children didn't make it.
Faduma now lives in a makeshift camp on the outskirts of Baidoa, some 250 kilometers west of Mogadishu. The city hosts around 600,000 refugees, all forcefully displaced by conflict and climate change. The International Organization for Migration, which administers the camp, has been doing its best to welcome these families. But with resources stretched to the limit, it can only provide the most basic of services. The organization recently called for international donations in order to tackle the root causes of the crisis and help displaced persons build a more stable future.
It's about securing their future by making sure that they have land that they own and can live on safely without fear of eviction, that they have water, sustainable water supply, that they have access to livelihood.
Somalia is experiencing one of its worst droughts on record, with 5 consecutive seasons of insufficient rain. A drought that's expected to continue in 2023, potentially displacing another 300,000 people by the summer.
Thousands remain in camps almost 2 years after a volcanic eruption in the Democratic Republic of the Congo forced their displacement. Renewed fighting between the military and rebels has pushed even more people into camps.
Beatrice Baremero's family is one of 20,000 that lost their homes during the 2021 Nyiragongo volcano eruption. They have been living ever since in the Kayembe displacement camp with hundreds of others. Renewed fighting since November between the Congolese military and March 23 movement rebels pushed hundreds more people into camps, stretching resources and security. Baremero's 17-year-old daughter was on her way to cut woods in January when she was attacked and raped.
She is in the hospital. There is nothing to eat. We suffer with this life in the camp. She only eats the food of other sick people. It has been 2 years we are living in this camp, and without any help, we are suffering.
The UN says clashes between the Congolese military and rebels in the past year displaced more than 600,000 people in North Kivu province, many ending up in camps like Kayembe near the city of Goma. Authorities gave some of the volcano-displaced people materials to rebuild their homes on top of the lava. But the 600 families left in Kayembe say they have received nothing.
First, we want something to eat. Secondly, we want to be taken out of here. The others got tiles, but we got nothing. We also want those tiles to go and rebuild our houses.
Nyiragongo Civil Society President Mambo Kawaya says the fighting displaced and the volcano displaced are competing for aid.
We believe the government should provide tiles to the volcano eruption victims. That way, they can leave the sites they are occupying and make way for the displaced until the areas that are occupied by the enemy come under government control.
Congolese authorities in the region did not respond to requests for comments on the volcano-displaced people. Meanwhile, Burundian troops arrived this week in Goma as part of an East African community force that hopes to bring peace to the region. Ruth Omar Esther, for VOA News, Munigi, Democratic Republic.
In collaboration with youth from the working class neighborhoods of Tunis, the NGO International Alert has launched a series of artistic productions. Their purpose is to highlight the violence faced by young people in Tunisia's marginalized neighborhoods, including violence at the hands of police. The productions include a photography and graffiti exhibition.
As they step into the studio, Mohammed and his friends resume work on their latest hip-hop track. A song in which the young rapper talks about the daily violence he faced growing up.
Where I come from, people see us as beggars or criminals. Our music comes from the violence we see. It's our way of lashing out.
Like Mohammed, many young Tunisians living in poor neighborhoods are confronted with violence and misery on a daily basis. In order to highlight their plight, a local NGO, International Alert, has been working on a series of artistic projects to help them tell their story. Some people experience violence on a daily basis, so we started thinking about how to channel this violence into cultural activities. In addition to Mohammed's hip-hop track, the NGO helped set up a photography and graffiti exhibition, as well as a short film projection, followed by a public debate. Organizers say they want to show young Tunisians that their opinion matters.
Young people are thinking of leaving because of issues like violence. There are many problems in Tunisia. I want to advise them to stay and help us find solutions.
Channeling their struggles into art, a way for these Tunisians to cope with the reality of a spiraling economic crisis that's seen many of their peers turn to crime or immigration to survive.
Basketball is one of the fastest growing sports in South Africa, with junior leagues exploding thanks in part of the Basketball Africa League, the joint effort between the National Basketball Association and the International Basketball Federation has young players excited for Bell Season 3, which tips off this Saturday.
The feeling inside the arena is electric. Local side Soweto Academy is taking on a junior NBA team from Royal Bafokeng. It's about bragging rights to see who the best ballers in the country are. And no one is holding back. 10 years ago, there were 3 clubs in Soweto. Today, there are more than 30 clubs for boys and girls. Coach Monwabisi Dlamini, co-founder of the Soweto Basketball Academy, says a lot of growth can be attributed to Basketball Africa League.
BAL is like NBA in Africa. These kids are really are crazy about it. They're crazy about the fact that they're actually seeing NBA type of basketball right here in home. So I mean, when we had our the qualifiers, when our kids went to go watch the Tigers, that was an amazing experience, because you were seeing actually the very best of the best in Africa and some international players playing there. And it's really helped grow basketball, because now, like I'm saying, when kids are seeing this up close, this is something to behold. So it's an amazing experience.
The success of the BAL has been built on the foundation of work done by the NBA and other basketball organizations over the years, explains BAL Vice President John Manuel Plange. He says the BAL is now the pinnacle of basketball on the continent.
The way we think about it is there's the entire basketball ecosystem, the development work, the junior NBA programs, Basketball Without Borders, etc. But then sitting atop that is this glitz and glamour of what the BAL represents, showcasing African talent globally.
Since its inception, the Soweto Academy has made sure that the club train boys and girls. 13-year-old Bokangle Fakane says she looks up to players like WNBA star Candace Parker and says her future, like Parker's, is destined for the courts.
I played basketball because it's the first sport whereby I felt connected to it and literally I first loved. Nowadays, we're finding a lot more girls playing and literally striving for the same achievement that we also want to strive for.
Voice of America is a broadcasting partner of the African League, which kicks off its new season on March 11th. Point guard and captain of the Soweto Raptors, Nhlanhla Lekapo, says he wishes there was a BAL team in Johannesburg, but for now, he's happy to support the only South African club in the league.
But I know my favorite team is based in Cape Town Tigers. I follow it, everything about them. I love how they move. I love the ball movement, the hustle, the determination, the consistency that they put every time that they go inside the court.
Outside, the boys continue to practice their dunks. They might not be slamming it into the net yet, but just like the sport, they will continue to grow. Zaid Kassem for VOA News, Soweto, South Africa.
It's 29 minutes after 7. We've come to the end of our international news. Let's take a break. We'll come back and continue with the show. Welcome back. Sikuvusele nawe losanza ukuzivulela lamhlehleleni Kusile Preface Show nje butakhomela ukuthi umhlaba wonke itolo bokubhala ilanga labomake International Women's Day. Mapalane wenhlangano yakamhlaba ke Antonio Guterres ukhulumile naye kube khona la kukhulumile ngalo leli langa sesemlalele ukuthi ukhuluma wathini.
Distinguished delegates, friends. The session of the Commission on the Status of Women is one of the most important annual events at the United Nations. And it takes on even greater significance at a time when women's rights are being abused, threatened, and violated around the world. Progress, won over decades, is vanishing before our eyes. In Afghanistan, women and girls have been erased from public life. In many places, women's sexual and reproductive rights are being rolled back. In some countries, girls go to school, risk kidnapping and assault. In others, police prey on vulnerable women they have sworn to protect. Gender equality is growing more distant. On the current track, where Newman puts it 300 years away. Maternal mortality is increasing. One woman dies every 2 minutes during pregnancy or childbirth. Most of these deaths are preventable. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic continues for millions of girls forced out of school, mothers and caregivers forced out of paid employment, and children forced into early marriage. From Ukraine to the Sahel, crises and conflicts affect women and girls first and worst. And at the international level, some countries now even oppose the inclusion of a gender perspective in multilateral negotiations.
Dear friends, the patriarchy is fighting back, but so are we. And I am here to say, loud and clear, the United Nations stands with women and girls everywhere. The Deputy Secretary General and the Executive Director of UN Women recently visited Afghanistan with a clear message for the authorities. Women and girls have fundamental human rights, and we will never give up fighting for them. The United Nations country teams and humanitarian agencies around the world are helping to provide practical support and care for women in crisis situations. Gender equality and investment in girls and women are central to all our humanitarian and development work. Our political and peacekeeping missions continue to promote women's participation in all peace processes, and they have overcome enormous obstacles, and they ensure women's priorities are integral to our political work. This is the only route to a sustainable, enduring peace. Distinguished representatives, dear friends, let's be clear. The international frameworks are not working for the world's women and girls. They need to change. My initiatives for a stimulus to get the Sustainable Development Goals on track and to reform the global financial system aim to increase resources for investment in women and girls at the country level. We can better deliver for the women of the world. Gender parity in our personnel is a vital step towards gender equality in our work. 5 years into the system-wide strategy on gender parity throughout the UN system, we have come a long way. We reached gender parity among the 180 members of the senior leadership and our resident coordinators throughout the countries of the world. Regarding our professional staff, the Secretariat as a whole is forecast to be close to parity in 2025, which is 3 years before the deadline. But, and I must be clear, the obstacles are more difficult to surmount in the missions on the ground. And that is why now our efforts will prioritize areas where progress has been slow. And I hope that member states will understand the need for change and will support us in adapting our rules to facilitate our movement towards gender parity.
Distinguished delegates, dear friends, your focus this year on closing gender gaps in technology and innovation could not be more timely. Because as technology races ahead, women and girls are being left behind. The math is simple. Without the insights and creativity of half the world, science and technology will fulfill just half their potential. 3 billion people are still unconnected to the internet, but the majority of them, women and girls in developing countries. And in least developed countries, just 19% of women are online. Globally, girls and women make up just 1/3 of students in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. In the tech industry, men outnumber women 2 to 1. But in artificial intelligence, only about 1 out of 5 workers is a woman. And artificial intelligence is shaping our future world. Let's hope it will not be shaped in a totally gender-biased way. The COVID-19 pandemic magnified inequalities in access to the internet and intensified the dangers women and girls face online. Misogynistic disinformation and misinformation flourish on social media platforms. So-called gender trolling is specifically aimed at silencing women and forcing them out of public life. The stories may be fake, but the damage done is very real. Distinguished delegates, dear friends, centuries of patriarchy, discrimination, and harmful stereotypes have created a huge gender gap in science and technology. Women account for just 3% of Nobel Prize winners in science categories. 3 years ago, Emmanuelle Charpentier and Jennifer Doudna made history as the first all-women team to win a Nobel Prize in science, ever. And teams of men have shared the prize 172 times. Big data is the new gold and the foundation of today's political and business decisions. But it often ignores gender differences or turns a blind eye to women altogether, resulting in products and services that bake in gender inequality from the start. We see gender-biased algorithms proliferate everywhere. And we cannot let the Silicon Valleys of our world become Death Valleys for women's rights. We need the full contributions of all for a future in which humanity controls technology rather than the other way around. And gender inequality is a question of power. And today I call for urgent action to equalize power in 3 ways. First, increasing education, income and employment for women and girls, particularly in the Global South. Connecting women in the Global South to the online world requires us to address rising levels of poverty and inequality. Second, leaders must promote women's and girls' full participation and leadership in science and technology, from governments to boardrooms and classrooms. The United Nations' first ever report on technology, innovation, education and gender equality provides many recommendations. They must be followed. It calls for gender-responsive education and skills training, algorithms that align with human rights and gender equality, and investment in bridging the digital gender divide. More than ever, we need collective action by governments, civil society, the private sector, and the technology community. And third, we must create a safe digital environment for women and girls. The United Nations is working with other stakeholders to advance a code of conduct for information integrity on digital platforms. The goal is to reduce harm and increase accountability while defending the right to freedom of expression. Excellencies, promoting women's full contributions to science, technology and innovation is not an act of charity or a favor to women. It is a must, and it benefits everyone. When women get medical services online, their families and communities are healthier. When women access online banking and resources without bias, they start businesses that benefit their societies and economies. When women have access to safe digital platforms, they build communities that can change the world. Look at the Me Too movement. And when women scientists and technologists tackle global problems, they multiply the chance of finding solutions. Many technology leaders, especially women, know that inequality and exclusion are a moral and commercial dead end. Women and girls are leading efforts to make science and technology accessible, inclusive, and safe. And in many countries, girls are studying science, technology, and math in record numbers. This must be followed everywhere. Women and girls will not be silenced. Their demands for their rights and freedoms echo around the globe, and the Commission on the Status of Women is a dynamo and catalyst for the transformation we need. Together, let us push back against the pushback on women's rights, against misogyny, and forward for women, girls, and our world, and I thank you.
Orasibongekeloyo UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres akhuluma ngelilanga le-International Women's Day. Uvetele ukuthi emalungelo yabomake kanye namantombazane solo ayachubeka nokuhlubeteka mhlaba wonke. Uvete nenzabeke ukuthi lamanye emave lapha e-Africa amantombazane lamancane solo ayahlubeteka ngokuthi aphoceleleke ukuthi ashade basesebancane. Sidachubela ku-UN representative of the Secretary General for Afghanistan abakhuluma khona ngokuthi nakhona emalungelo yabomake eveni lase-Afghanistan nakhona ayahlubeteka.
Today's International Women's Day, but I have few comforting messages to the women and girls in Afghanistan. The bans against women working, studying, traveling without a male companion, and even going to parks or baths remains in place. The Taliban claim to have united the country, but they have also severely divided it by gender. At a moment when Afghanistan needs all of its human capital to recover from decades of war, half of the country's potential doctors, scientists, journalists, and politicians are shut in their homes, their dreams crushed, and their talents confiscated. Afghanistan under the Taliban remains the most repressive country in the world regarding women's rights. The Taliban tell us that this gender segregation is not a significant issue and is being addressed. They say they should be judged on other achievements. The reality is that the 20th December ban on higher education and then the 24th December ban on women working for NGOs have serious consequences for the Afghan population and for the relationship between the Taliban and the international community. Funding for Afghanistan is likely to drop if women were not allowed to work. NGOs run by women, for example, have had to cease activities. If the amount of assistance is reduced, then the amount of US dollar cash shipments required to support that assistance will also decline. Discussions of providing greater development-style assistance, including small infrastructure and policies to mitigate the effects of climate change, as well as planned political engagements, have halted as a result of these bans. We understand that the Taliban have a highly different worldview than any other government, but it is difficult to understand how any government worthy of the name can govern against the needs of half of its population. Mr. President, our focus has always been on the Afghan people. Indeed, our support for women's rights, human rights, and girls' education is because this is clear expectation of the Afghan people. They rightly expect that their country should not be the most retrograde on the planet regarding women's rights. They understood by the assurances that the Taliban gave during the Doha negotiations that these rights would not be curtailed. Some women have told us that they even welcomed the Taliban's coming to power because it ended the war. But very soon they have begun to lose hope. They say their elimination from public life is no better than fearing violent death. The Afghan people continue to suffer deeply in other ways. Afghanistan remains the largest humanitarian crisis globally. 2/3 of the population, 28 million people, will need humanitarian assistance this year to survive. This will cost $4.62 billion, the single largest country appeal ever. Almost half of the population, 20 million people, are experiencing crisis levels of food insecurity. 6 million are one step away from famine-like conditions. Our humanitarian action is challenged by an increasingly complex access and security environment. The bans against women working in NGOs are not the only serious obstacles to reaching vulnerable populations. We are also concerned that national women staff working for the UN will also be banned. To date, we have seen efforts by the Taliban to prevent female staff coming to UN offices in 5 provinces. NGOs experience these restrictions to a much greater degree. In some provinces, we have had to temporarily suspend providing assistance because local officials have placed unacceptable conditions on its distribution. In general, there have been a recent deterioration of the humanitarian space. In 2022, before these constraints were put in place, the United Nations and NGOs partners were able to reach 26.1 million people, in large part thanks to the greater access to the country due to the improved security. I fear in 2023 that bans on women and other restrictions that the Taliban have willfully applied will hinder future access. December 2022 witnessed the highest number of access constraints. With the Taliban ban on women's NGOs employment in place, our humanitarian workers are forced to make uncomfortable and imperfect compromises in order to continue to save Afghan lives. The absurdity of the situation requires no comment. Our ability to deliver is also affected by growing concerns about the looming threat of ISIL-K to our own security and that of our NGO implementing partners. We are grateful for the security provided so far, but are concerned that the de facto authorities do not have the capacity to fully address emerging threats. Mitigating these threats will require more concerted and more united member state attention, and is clearly an issue that the international community has in common with the de facto authorities. Apart from the constriction of the rights of women and girls, we are also witnessing an erosion of other human rights. The Secretary General's report notes ongoing extrajudicial killings, arbitrary arrests, detentions, and torture carried out by the de facto authorities against former government officials and security forces. These are violations of the Taliban's amnesty decree. There is no transparency regarding investigations of violations, and violations appear increasingly allowed to occur. We have also seen continued implementation of the instruction by the Taliban leader calling for judicial corporal punishments often carried out in public. These acts constitute, according to international law, form of torture and ill treatment. There is also greater stifling and repression of the media sector and civil society. Any society needs the voices of its citizens and constituencies to find compromises through dialogue, not intimidation and repression. Mr. President, 1 year ago, UNAMA proposed to this Council that the end of the general conflict in 2021 was an opportunity to build positive peace. Our initial engagement with the de facto authorities were relatively constructive and gave us cautious hope. We began devising a pathway that would build confidence and clarify to the Taliban international expectations regarding their stated desire to rejoin the international community. Yet, the Taliban leadership beginning a year ago began consistently taking decisions that negate this stated goal. The accumulation of these decisions has been a form of government that is simply unacceptable to the international community, something that could not have surprised the Taliban. Our collective statements of condemnation and the imposition of sanctions have not an effect. They may have hardened certain Taliban positions. On the other hand, I do believe that there is a faction within the Taliban leadership and across the movement that does not agree with the current direction the leadership has taken. This faction understands that attention must be paid to the real needs of the people. Perhaps it can eventually execute a change of direction, but time is running short, global crises are multiplying, demands on donor resources are multiplying as the availability of those resources diminishes. I see these dynamics with growing concern. I fear history that repeats itself with Afghanistan taking decisions that increase its isolation. Unlike in the 1990s, however, the world is much more focused on Afghanistan. UNAMA's strategy is to preserve whatever political space exists for honest and straightforward discourse between the Taliban and the international community, both the region and the donors. We are at the moment of political impasse, where trust is in short supply. Mr. President, UNAMA is on Afghanistan on your behalf, engaging every day with the de facto authorities, with the local political opposition, with civil society, private sector actors, and increasingly with Afghanistan's youth who inherit the future now being shaped. Our field offices carry out road missions reaching all corners of the country, not only to provide assistance, but to remain connected with the people to provide you with the best possible information regarding the situation on the ground. That situation is extremely complex, and sometimes there are greater grounds for hope than it appears. But there is no doubt that the larger and most visible trends are worrying and negative. They make it harder to preserve this necessary space for dialogue. The international community inside the region and out have all called for this decrease to be reversed for the sake of international community. This is clear and unified position. We hope that Taliban give greater consideration to the fact that this is in their interest, and above all, in the interest of the Afghan people. At the same time, the international community must begin constructing an agenda for discussion with the de facto authorities that includes issues that matter to the Taliban. These two elements can form the basis of a process that can help build confidence and lead to a mutually acceptable outcome. Finally, Mr. President, in order for UNAMA to play its part in implementing this approach on behalf of this Council, we hope that we will be given a mandate for another year. As I mentioned in my last briefing, UNAMA commissioned an independent review of its mandate led by a former DSRSG. The general conclusions are the UNAMA's current mandate is sufficiently robust, balanced, and comprehensive for the current situation. Despite the setbacks I have described, we continue to assert that there is no alternative to unified, patient, and principled engagement that puts the needs and rights of the Afghan people first. Thank you.
That was a UN representative speaking on the situation of women and girls in Afghanistan. You'll recall that last year the Taliban banned women and girls to attend tertiary and colleges in Afghanistan. Have a beautiful day.